welcome to Ebony's Storytelling. How are you doing today? We are going to be reading a story, but, first we are going to be reading the Bible.
Yay!
Then we are going to be reading Ben-Hur. And then, before we go to Ben-Hur, we are doing the synopsis. And before we do any of that, I have a recorder thing to do.
Okay.
It's Mary Had a Little Lamb. I messed up a little bit there, but
We get the idea of it, though, don't we?
on to Heavy D. Make sure to hit the like button and hit the subscribe button and slap the bell to never miss another video.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. Howdy. So we are starting a new book today. Oh, sorry, we're in the... That's the scary zone. Okay, is that better? We're starting a new book in the Bible today. And so we just finished the Old Testament book of Judges Ruth, because in the Hebrew Bible, apparently those two books are together. So that's why we read both of them. And now we're moving to the New Testament. So we're going to start the book of Hebrews. Are you ready, JJ? Are you ready to settle down? All right, I'm going to move this in a little closer. We don't want people tripping on it, because that happens sometimes. JJ, do I need to take the recorder? JJ? No. Okay. All right, I need you to settle down, please. Okay, so this is the English Standard Version of the Bible. This is Hebrews chapter 1. Long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, through whom also he created the world. He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by the word of his power. After making purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high, having become as much superior to angels as the name he has inherited is more excellent than theirs. For to which of the angels did God ever say, "You are my son, today I have begotten you"? Or again, "I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son"? And again, when he brings the firstborn into the world, he says, "Let all God's angels worship him." Of the angels, he says, "He makes his angels winds, and his ministers a flame of fire." But of the Son, he says, "Your throne, O God, is forever and ever. The scepter of uprightness is the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of gladness beyond your companions. And you, Lord, laid the foundation of the earth in the beginning. And the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you remain. They will all wear out like a garment, like a robe. You will roll them up like a garment. They will be changed. But you are the same, and your years will have no end. And to which of the angels has he ever said, "Sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet"? Are they not all ministering spirits sent out to serve for the sake of those who are to inherit salvation? That is the end of Hebrews chapter 1. And tomorrow we will continue with Hebrews chapter 2. So, today we are about to finish book 5 of Ben-Hur. We will experience the great chariot race, one of the epic scenes of Western literature. And before we do that, JJ knows what comes next. So here comes Kimberly to give you the synopsis. I hope that y'all all like Hebrews, because it is one of my 27 favorite books in the New Testament. So please hit that like button to let me know that you like Hebrews as much as I do. Or maybe more. I don't know.
Aren't there only 27 books?
There are 27 books in the New Testament.
So you caught me right as I was doing my nails, and it's kind of not dry yet. So, what happened in the last chapter, the last few chapters was this one guy, he comes up and he tricks Masala into basically betting his life savings on him winning that chariot race. So, pretty high stakes for him. If he doesn't win, he's broke. But on the flip side, if he does win, then he's double as rich. So then after that, there was a bunch of details about how the festivals like the Olympics. That's basically it, right?
Yeah, we'll
And
talk a little bit more.
They're getting ready, and there's like a few things that happened before and maybe a few that happened afterward. So I'm gonna hand it over to Dad.
Howdy again. How's it going? I'm gonna move this a little bit closer. Yay. All right, so
Smell this.
Okay, now I have to smell soap. It smells great.
It smells like fruit
This is
loops.
Buff City Soap Fruity Loopy. Smells great.
It smells
Very
like fruit
very
loops.
fruity. All right. Okay, so now that was an added bonus content for today. So at this time, what we're going to do is I want to just say a few words, because I ramble, and that's what I do, right? Yeah. So something that Kimberly didn't say about yesterday's thing is that they also welcomed the consul, which was basically, I guess he was like representative of Caesar. I mean, the Roman Republic obviously it ended with Julius Caesar in, what was it, 40-something BC, I think. So there wasn't an official consul in Rome, which was an elected position that they had before they had emperors. So I'm not exactly sure who he was, but I think that maybe he was like a provincial governor or something like that. Anyway, regardless, he was a pretty important dude. And he got like the box seat, you know, with the best view and all that and everything. Another thing that that I thought about yesterday while I was reading, and I wanted to share it, was that all this talk about the talents, and they said if what's his name? Well, okay, so if Ben-Hur had taken the 120 talents, then I think Masala said that he was just the 120 and he'd be as rich as Caesar. And then later in yesterday's chapter, when they're doing the betting, they're betting for 50 talents. And Masala says, no, wait, that's too much. I can't do 50 talents. Nobody has 50 talents except for Caesar. So literally what it made me think of was the story where the parable that Jesus is telling with the talents. And there's one person has 5 talents, one person has 3 talents, one person has 1 talent, or or whatever the number is, it doesn't really matter. But I always felt really sorry for the person that only had one talent, because he just gave him like a penny or something, in the story, and in our culture we don't really know what a talent really is. But if 50 talents is as rich as Caesar, and Messala, who is like basically a pseudo prince, can't wager 50 talents because it's so much money that he doesn't have it, then maybe one talent is quite a bit, and so anyway, maybe I don't quite feel so sorry for that guy after all, because he buried his talent in the ground. All right, so, and my book is way over there, so I'm going to have to get up just a second. That is what happens when I walk around and leave things places. All right, so we're going to hopefully finish book 13 today. Sorry, we're going to start chapter 13 of book 5. We're going to hopefully finish book 5 today. Woo, my brain is not focused. All right, so move this a little closer. Chapter 13, the start. About 3 o'clock, speaking in modern style, the program was concluded. That's the processional that they were doing. Was concluded except the chariot race. Oh, okay, so all of the events were concluded except for the chariot race. The editor, wisely considerate of the comfort of the people, chose that time for a recess. At once, the vomitoria were thrown open, and all who could hastened to the portico outside where the restaurateurs had their quarters. Those who remained yawned, talked, gossiped, consulted their tablets, and all distinctions else forgotten merged into but two classes: the winners, who were happy, and the losers, who were grum and captious. Now, however, a third class of spectators, composed of citizens who desired only to witness the chariot race, availed themselves of the recess to come and take their reserved seats. By so doing, they thought to attract the least attention and give the least offense. Among these were Simonides and his party, whose places were in the vicinity of the main entrance on the north side, opposite the consul. As the 4 stout servants carried the merchant in his chair up the aisle, curiosity was much excited. Presently someone called his name. Those about caught it, and passed it on along the benches to the west, and there was hurried climbing on seats to get sight of the man about whom common report had coined and put in circulation a romance so mixed of good fortune and bad that the like had never been known or heard of before. Ilderim was also recognized and warmly greeted, but nobody knew Balthazar or the 2 women who followed him, closely veiled. The people made way for the party respectfully, and the ushers seated them in easy speaking distance of each other down by the balustrade overlooking the arena. In providence of comfort, they sat upon cushions and had stools for footrests. The women were Iris and Esther. Upon being seated, the latter cast a frightened look over the circus and drew the veil closer about her face, while the Egyptian, letting her veil fall upon her shoulders, gave herself to view and gazed at the scene with the seeming unconsciousness of being stared at, which in a woman is usually the result of long social habitude. The newcomers generally were yet making their first examination of the great spectacle, beginning with the consul and his attendants, when some workmen ran in and commenced to stretch a chalked rope across the arena from balcony to balcony in front of the pillars of the first goal. About the same time also 6 men came in through the Porta Pompei and took post one in front of each occupied stall, whereat there was a prolonged hum of voices in every quarter. See, see, the green goes to number 4 on the right. The Athenian is there, and Messala, yes, he is in number 2. The Corinthian, watch the white. See, he crosses over. He stops. Number 1 it is. Number 1 on the left. No, the black stops there, and the white at number 2. So it is. These gatekeepers, it should be understood, were dressed in tunics, colored like those of the competing charioteers. So when they took their stations, everybody knew the particular stall in which his favorite was that moment waiting. Did you ever see Messala? The Egyptian asked Esther. The Jewess shuddered as she answered no. If not, her father's enemy, the Roman, was Ben-Hur's. He is beautiful as Apollo. As Iris spoke, her large eyes brightened, and she took her jeweled fan. Esther looked at her with the thought, is he, then, so much handsomer than Ben-Hur? Next moment she heard Ilderim say to her father, yes, his stall is number 2 on the left of the Porta Pompei. And thinking it was of Ben-Hur he spoke, her eyes turned that way, taking but the briefest glance at the wattled face of the gate. She drew the veil close and muttered a little prayer. Presently, Sanballat came to the party. I am just from the stalls, O Sheik, he said, bowing gravely to Ilderim, who began combing his beard, while his eyes glittered with eager inquiry. The horses are in perfect condition. Ilderim replied simply, if they are beaten, I pray it be by some other than Messala. Turning then to Simonides, Sanballat drew out a tablet, saying, I bring you also something of interest. I reported, you will remember, the wager concluded with Messala last night, and stated that I left another which, if taken, was to be delivered to me in writing today before the race began. Here it is. Simonides took the tablet and read the memorandum carefully. Yes, he said, their emissary came to ask me if you had so much money with me. Keep the tablet close. If you lose, you know where to come. If you win, his face knit hard. If you win, ah, friend, see to it. See the signers escape not. Hold them to the last shekel. That is what they would with us. Trust me, replied the purveyor. Will you not sit with us? Asked Simonides. You are very good, the other returned, but if I leave the consul, young Rome yonder will boil over. Peace to you, peace to all. At length the recess came to an end. The trumpeters blew a call at which the absentees rushed back to their places. At the same time some attendants appeared in the arena, and, climbing upon the division wall, went to an establisher near the second goal at the west end, and placed upon it 7 wooden balls. Then, returning to the first goal, upon an entablature there they set up 7 other pieces of wood, hewn to represent dolphins. What shall they do with the balls and fishes, O Sheik? Asked Balthazar. Hast thou never attended a race? Never before, and hardly know I why I am here. Well, they are to keep the count. At the end of each round, run thou shalt see 1 ball and 1 fish taken down. The preparations were now complete, and presently a trumpeter in gaudy uniform arose by the editor, ready to blow the signal of commencement promptly at his order. Straightway the stir of the people and the hum of their conversation died away. Every face nearby and every face in the lessening perspective turned to the east, as all eyes settled upon the gates of the 6 stalls which shut in the competitors. The unusual flush upon his face gave proof that even Simonides had caught the universal excitement. Ilderim pulled his beard fast and furious. Look now for the Roman, said the fair Egyptian to Esther, who did not hear her. Sorry, that was a girl. Look now for the Roman. said the fair Egyptian to Esther, who did not hear her, for with close-drawn veil and beating heart she sat waiting for Ben-Hur. The structure containing the stalls, it should be observed, was in form of the segment of the circle, retired on the right so that its central point was projected forward, and midway the course on the starting side of the first goal. Every stall, consequently, was equally distant from the starting line or chalked rope above mentioned. The trumpet sounded short and sharp, whereupon the starters, one for each chariot, leapt down from behind the pillars of the goal, ready to give assistance if any of the fours proved unmanageable. Again the trumpet blew, and simultaneously the gatekeepers threw the stalls open. First appeared the mounted attendants of the charioteers, 5 in all, Ben-Hur having rejected the service. The chalked line was lowered and let them pass, then raised again. They were beautifully mounted, yet scarcely observed as they rode forward, for all the time the trampling of eager horses and the voices of drivers scarcely less eager were heard behind in the stalls, so that one might not look away an instant from the gaping doors. JJ, I need you to stop doing that, please. The chalked line up again, the gatekeepers called their men. Instantly the ushers on the balcony waved their hands and shouted with all their strength, "Down! Down!" as well have whistled to stay a storm. Forth from each stall, like missiles in a volley from so many great guns, rushed the 6 fours, and up the vast assemblage arose, electrified and irrepressible, and, leaping upon the benches, filled the circus and the air above it with yells and screams. This was the time for which they had so patiently waited. This was the moment of supreme interest, treasured up in talk and dreams since the proclamation of the games. "He has come! There, look!" cried Iris, pointing to Messala. "I see him," answered Esther, looking at Ben-Hur. The veil was withdrawn. For an instant the little Jewess was brave. An idea of the joy there is in doing a heroic deed under the eyes of a multitude came to her, and she understood ever after how at such times the souls of men, in the frenzy of performance, laugh at death or forget it utterly. The competitors were now under view from nearly every part of the circus, yet the race was not begun. They had first to make the chalked line successfully. The line was stretched for the purpose of equalizing the start. If it were dashed upon, the comfiture of man and horses might be apprehended. On the other hand, to approach it timidly was to incur the hazard of being thrown behind in the beginning of the race, and that was certain forfeit of the great advantage always striven for. The position next, the division wall on the inner line of the course. This trial, its perils and consequences, the spectators knew thoroughly, and if the opinion of the old Nestor, uttered what time he handed the reins to his son, were true, it is not strength but art obtained the prize, and to be swift is less than to be wise. All the benches might well look for warning of the winner to be now given, justifying the interest with which they breathlessly watched for the result. The arena swam in a dazzle of light, yet each driver looked first thing for the rope, then for the coveted inner line. So all 6 aiming at the same point and speeding furiously, a collision seemed inevitable, nor that merely. What if the editor, at the last moment dissatisfied with the start, should withhold the signal to drop the rope, or if he should not give it in time? Are we good? Oh, it's Daniel on the phone. Hi, Daniel.
Bye. Say goodnight.
I think we're going to pause here for just a minute so we can say goodnight to Daniel. Gute Nacht, Daniel. Did y'all hear that? Daniel's on the live stream.
You can.
almost done with chapter 13. Thanks for your patience. Oh, hey, Daniel, Granny Bear says hi.
Hey, Dad.
So
Why don't you listen to Dad read?
I'm going to finish the chapter 13, which is the start of the chariot race.
Oh, that's awesome. This is the best part.
The crossing was about 250 feet in width. Quick the eye, steady the hand, unerring the judgment required. If now one look away, or his mind wander, or a rein slip, and what attraction in the ensemble of the thousands over the spreading balcony, calculating upon the natural impulse to give one glance, just one in sooth of curiosity or vanity, malice might be there with an artifice, while friendship and love, did they service the same result, might be as deadly as malice. The divine last touch in perfecting the beautiful is animation. Can we accept the saying, then, these latter days, so tame in pastime and dull in sports, have scarcely anything to compare to the spectacle offered by the 6 contestants? Let the reader try to fancy it. Let him first look down upon the arena and see it glistening in its frame of dull gray granite walls. Let him then, in this perfect field, see the chariots, light of wheels, very graceful and ornate as paint and burnishing can make them. Massalas rich with ivory and gold. Let him see the drivers, erect and statuesque, undisturbed by the motion of the cars, their limbs naked and fresh and ruddy with the healthful polish of the baths. In their right hands goads, suggestive of torture, dreadful to the thought. In their left hands held the careful separation, and high that they may not interfere with view of the steeds. The reins passing taut from the 4 ends of the carriage poles. Let him see the 4s, chosen for beauty as well as speed. Let him see in magnificent action their masters not more conscious of the situation and all that is asked and hoped from them, their heads tossing, nostrils in play, now distant, now contracted, limbs too dainty for the sand with which they touch but to spurn, limbs slender yet with impact crushing as hammers, every muscle of the rounded bodies instinct with glorious life. Swelling, diminishing, justifying the world and taking from them its ultimate measure of force. Finally, along with the chariots, drivers, horses, let the reader see the accompanying shadows fly, and with such distinctness as the picture comes, he may share the satisfaction and deeper pleasure of those to whom it was a thrilling fact, not a feeble fancy. Every age has its plenty of sorrows. Heaven help where there are no pleasures. The competitors, having started each on the shortest line for the position next to the wall, yielding would be like giving up the race, and who dared yield? It is not in common nature to change a purpose in mid-career, and the cries of encouragement from the balcony were indistinguishable and indescribable, a roar which had the same effect upon all the drivers. The 4s neared the rope together. Then the trumpeter by the editor's side blew a signal vigorously. 20 feet away it was not heard. Seeing the action, however, the judges dropped the rope, and not an instant too soon, for the hoof of one of Massalla's horses struck it as it fell. Nothing daunted, the Roman shook out his long lash, loosed the reins, leaned forward, and with a triumphant shout took the wall. "Jove with us! Jove with us!" yelled all the Roman faction in a frenzy of delight, as Messalla turned in. The bronze lion's head at the end of his axle caught the foreleg of the Athenian's right-hand trace-mate, flinging the brute over against its yoke-fellow. Both staggered, struggled, and lost their headway. The ushers had their will, at least in part. The thousands held their breath with horror. Only up where the consul sat was there shouting. "Jove with us!" screamed Drusus frantically. "He wins! Jove with us!" answered his associates, seeing Messala sped on. Tablet in hand, Sanballat turned to them. A crash from the course below stopped his speech, and he could not but look that way. Messala, having passed the Corinthian, was the only contestant on the Athenians' right, and to that side the latter tried to turn his broken fore, and then, as ill fortune would have it, the wheel of the Byzantine, who was next on the left, struck the tailpiece of his chariot, knocking his feet from under him. There was a crash, a scream of rage and fear, and the unfortunate Cleanthes fell under the hoofs of his own steeds, a terrible sight, against which Esther covered her eyes. On swept the Corinthian, on the Byzantine, on the Sidonian. Sanballat looked for Ben-Hur and turned again to Drusus and his courtier. 100 sestertii on the Jew," he cried. "Taken," answered Drusus. "Another 100 on the Jew," shouted Sanballat. Nothing appeared to hear him. Nobody appeared to hear him. He called again. The situation below was too absorbing, and they were too busy shouting, "Messala! Messala! Jove with us!" When the Jewess ventured to look again, a party of workmen were removing the horses and broken car. Another party were taking off the man himself, and every bench upon which there was a Greek was vocal with execrations and prayers for vengeance. Suddenly she dropped her hands. Ben-Hur, unhurt, was to the front, coursing freely forward along with the Roman. Behind them, in a group, followed the Sidonian, the Corinthian, and the Byzantine. The race was on. The souls of the racers were in it. Over them bent the myriads. Chapter 14, The Race. When the dash for position began, Ben-Hur, as we have seen, was on the extreme left of the six. For a moment, like the others, he was half blinded by the light in the arena, yet he managed to catch sight of his antagonists and divine their purpose. At Messala, who was more than an antagonist to him, he gave one searching look, the air of passionless hauteur characteristic of the fine patrician face was there as of old, and so was the Italian beauty, which the helmet rather increased, but more it may have been a jealous fancy, or the effect of the brassy shadow in which the features were at the moment cast. Still the Israelite thought he saw the soul of the man as through a glass, darkly, cruel, cunning, desperate, not so excited as determined, a soul in a tension of watchfulness and fierce resolve. In a time not longer than was required to turn to his fore again, Ben-Hur felt his own resolution harden to a like temper. At whatever cost, at all hazards, he would humble his enemy. Prize, friends, wagers, honor, everything that can be thought of as a possible interest in the race was lost in the one deliberate purpose. Regard for life even should not hold him back. Yet there was no passion on his part, no blinding rush of heated blood from his heart to brain and back again, no impulse to fling himself upon fortune. He did not believe in fortune, far otherwise. He had his plan, and confiding in himself, he settled to the task, never more observant, never more capable. The air about him seemed aglow with a renewed and perfect transparency. When not halfway across the arena, he saw that Messala's rush would, if there was no collision and the rope fell, give him the wall. That the rope would fall, he ceased as soon to doubt, and further it came to him, a sudden flash-like insight, that Messala knew it was to be let drop at the last moment. Pre-arrangement with the editor could safely reach that point in the contest. And it suggested, what more Roman-like, than for the official to lend himself to the countrymen who, besides being so popular, had also so much at stake. There could be no other accounting for the confidence with which Messala pushed his four forward the instant his competitors were prudently checking their fours in front of the obstruction. No other except madness. It is one thing to see a necessity and another to act upon it. Ben-Hur yielded the wall for the time. The rope fell, and all the fours but his sprang into the course under urgency of voice and lash. He drew head to the right, and with all the speed of his Arabs, darted across the trails of his opponents, the angle of movements being such as to lose the least time and gain the greatest possible advantage. So, while the spectators were shivering at the Athenians' mishap, and the Sidonian, Byzantine, and Corinthian were striving with such skill as they possessed to avoid involvement in the ruin, Ben-Hur swept around and took the course neck and neck with Messala, though on the outside. The marvelous skill shown in making the change thus from the extreme left across to the right without appreciable loss did not fail the sharp eyes upon the benches. The circus seemed to rock, and rock again with prolonged applause. Then Esther clapped her hands in glad surprise, then Sanballat smiling, offering his 100 sestertii a second time without a taker. And then the Romans began to doubt, thinking Messala might have found an equal, if not a master, and that in an Israelite. And now, Mom's downstairs. And now, racing together, side by side, a narrow interval between them, the two neared the second goal. The pedestal of the 3 pillars there, viewed from the west, was a stone wall in the form of a half-circle, around which the course and opposite balcony were bent in exact parallelism. Making this turn was considered in all respects the most telling test of a charioteer. It was, in fact, the very feat in which Orestes failed. As an involuntary admission of interest on the part of the spectators, a hush fell over all the circus, so that for the first time in the race the rattle and clang of the cars plunging after the tugging steeds were distinctly heard. Then, it would seem, Messala observed Ben-Hur and recognized him, and at once the audacity of the man flamed out in an astonishing manner. "Down, Eros! Up, Mars!" he shouted, whirling his lash with practised hand. "Down, Eros! Up, Mars!" he repeated, and caught the well-doing Arabs of Ben-Hur, a cut the like of which they had never known. The blow was seen in every quarter, and the amazement was universal. The silence deepened up on the benches behind the consul. The boldest held his breath, waiting for the outcome. Only a moment thus, then involuntarily, down from the balcony, as thunder falls, burst the indignant cry of the people. The 4 sprang forward affrighted. No hand had ever been laid upon them except in love. They had been nurtured ever so tenderly, and as they grew, their confidence in man became a lesson to men beautiful to see. What should such dainty natures do under such indignity but leap as from death? Forward they sprang as with one impulse, and forward leapt the car. Past question, every experience is serviceable to us. Where got Ben-Hur the large hand and mighty grip which helped him now so well? Where but from the grip with which so long he fought the sea? And what was this spring of the floor under his feet to the dizzy, eccentric lurch with which in the old time the trembling ship yielded to the beat of staggering billows, drunk with their power? So he kept his place, and gave the 4 free rein, and called to them in soothing voice, trying merely to guide them round the dangerous turn. And before the fever of the people began to abate, he had back the mastery, nor that only, an on approaching the first goal, he was again side by side with Messala, bearing with him the sympathy and admiration of everyone, not a Roman. So clearly was the feeling shown, so vigorous its manifestation, that Messala, with all his boldness, felt it unsafe to trifle further. I'm going to show you the picture now. Here is a picture. And JJ, if you want to come see it, you can. JJ? Picture of the chariot race. Which one do you think has been her? Yep, remember he didn't have a helmet. They mentioned that.
And then this guy's got the whip too.
Yep. All right. As the cars whirled round the goal, Esther caught sight of Ben-Hur's face, a little pale, a little higher raised, otherwise calm, even placid. Immediately a man climbed on the entablature at the west end of the division wall and took down one of the conical wooden balls. A dolphin on the east entablature was taken down at the same time. In like manner, the second ball and second dolphin disappeared, and then the third ball and third dolphin. 3 rounds concluded. Still Messala held the inside position. Still Ben-Hur moved with him side by side. Still the other competitors followed as before. The contest began to have the appearance of one of the double races which became so popular in Rome during the later Caesarean period, Messala and Ben-Hur in the first, the Corinthian, Sidonian, and Byzantine in the second. Meantime, the ushers succeeded in returning the multitude to their seats, though the clamor continued to run the rounds, keeping, as it were, even pace with the rivals in the course below. In the 5th round, the Sidonian succeeded in getting a place outside Ben-Hur, but lost it directly. The 6th round was entered upon without change of relative position. Gradually, the speed had been quickened. Gradually, the blood of the competitors warmed with the work. Men and beasts seemed to know alike that the final crisis was near, bringing the time for the winner to assert himself. The interest, which from the beginning had centered chiefly in the struggle between the Roman and the Jew, with an intense and general sympathy for the latter, was fast changing to anxiety on his account. On all the benches the spectators bent forward, motionless, except as their faces turned following the contestants. Ilderim quitted combing his beard, and Esther forgot her fears. 100 sestertii on the Jew! Cried Sanballat to the Romans under the consul's awning. There was no reply. 1 talent, or 5 talents, or 10, choose ye! He shook his tablets at them defiantly. I will take thy sestertii, answered the Roman youth, preparing to write. Do not so, interposed a friend. Why? Messala hath reached his utmost speed. See him lean over his chariot rim, the reins loose as flying ribbons. Look then at the Jew. The first one looked. By Hercules, he replied, his countenance falling. The dog throws all his weight on the bits. I see. If the gods help not our friend, he will be run away with by the Israelite. No, not yet. Look, Jove with us! Jove with us! The cry, swelled by every Latin tongue, shook the Valeria over the consul's head. If it were true that Messala had attained his utmost speed, the effort was with effect. Slowly but certainly he was beginning to forge ahead. His horses were running with their heads low down. From the balcony their bodies appeared actually to skim the earth. Their nostrils showed blood red in expansion. Their eyes seemed straining in their sockets. Certainly the good steeds were doing their best. How long could they keep their pace? It was but the commencement of the 6th round. On they dashed. As they neared the second goal, Ben-Hur turned in behind the Roman's car. The joy of the Messala faction reached its bound. They screamed and howled, and tossed their colors, and Sanballat filled his tablets with wagers of their tendering. Malach, in the lower gallery over the Gate of Triumph found it hard to keep his cheer. He had cherished the vague hint dropped to him by Ben-Hur of something to happen in the turning of the western pillars. It was the 5th round, yet the something had not come, and he had said to himself, the 6th will bring it. But lo, Ben-Hur was hardly holding a place at the tail of his enemy's car. Over in the east end, Simonides' party held their peace. The merchant's head was bent low. Ilderim tugged at his beard and dropped his brows till there was nothing of his eyes but an occasional sparkle of light. Esther scarcely breathed. Iris alone appeared glad. Along the home stretch, 6th round, Messala leading, next to him Ben-Hur, and so close it was the old story. First flew Eumelus on Phaeacian steeds, with those of Tros, bold Diomed succeeds. Close on Eumelus' back they puff the wind, and seem just mounting on his car behind. Full on his neck he feels the sultry breeze, and hovering o'er their stretching shadow sees. Thus to the first goal, and round it, Messala, fearing of losing his place, hugged the stony wall with perilous clasp. A foot to the left, and he had been dashed to pieces. Yet when the turn was finished, no man, looking at the wheel tracks of the 2 cars, could have said, "Here went Messala, there the Jew." They left but one trace behind them. As they whirled by, Esther saw Ben-Hur's face again, and it was whiter than before. Simonides, shrewder than Esther, said to Ilderim the moment the rivals turned into the course, "I am no judge, good sheik, if Ben-Hur be not about to execute some design. His face hath that look." To which Ilderim answered, "Saw you how clean they were and fresh? By the splendor of God, friend, they have not been running, but now watch." 1 ball and 1 dolphin remained on the entablatures, and all the people drew a long breath, for the beginning of the end was at hand. First the Sidonian gave the scourge to his four, and, smarting with fear and pain, they dashed desperately forward, promising for a brief time to go to the front. The effort ended in promise. Next, the Byzantine and Corinthian each made the trial with like result, after which they were practically out of the race. Thereupon, with a readiness perfectly explicable, all the factions except the Romans joined hope in Ben-Hur and openly indulged their feelings. "Ben-Hur! Ben-Hur!" they shouted, and the blent voices of the many rolled overwhelmingly against the consular stand. From the benches above him, as he passed, the favourite ascended in fierce injunctions. "Spend thee, Jew! Take the wall now! Unloose the Arabs! Give them rein and scourge! Let him not have the turn on thee again, now or never!" Over the balustrade they stooped low, stretching their hands, imploring to him. Either he did not hear, or could not do better, for halfway around the course, and he was still following, at the second goal even, still no change. And now, to make the turn, Messala began to draw in his left-hand steeds, an act which necessarily slackened their speed. His spirit was high, more than one altar was richer of his vows. The Roman genius was still president. On the 3 pillars, only 600 feet away were fame, increase of fortune, promotions, and a triumph ineffably sweetened by hate, and, all in store for him. That moment Malak in the gallery saw Ben-Hur lean forward over his Arabs and give them the reins. Out flew the many-folded lash of his hand. Over the backs of the startled steeds it writhed and hissed and writhed again and again, and though it fell not, there were both sting and menace in its quick report. And as the man passed thus from quiet to resistless action, His face suffused, his eyes gleaming. Along the reins he seemed to flash his will, and instantly not one, but the four as one, answered with a leap that landed them alongside the Roman's car. Messala, on the perilous edge of the goal, heard but dared not look to see what the awakening portended. From the people he received no sign. Above the noises of the race there was but one voice, and that was Ben-Hur's. In the old Aramaic, as the sheik himself, he called to the Arabs, "On Altair! On Regal! What, Antares, dost thou linger now? Good horse, aho, Aldebaran!" That's the names of the four horses. I hear them singing in the tents. I hear the children singing, and the women singing of the stars of Altair, Antares, Regal, Aldebaran, victory! And the song will never end. Well done! Home tomorrow under the black tent. Home on Antares! The tribe is waiting for us, and the master is waiting. 'Tis done, ha ha! We have overthrown the proud. The hand that smote us is in the dust. Ours the glory, ha ha, steady. The work is done, so ho, rest. There had never been anything of the kind more simple, seldom anything so instantaneous. At the moment chosen for the dash, Messala was moving in a circle round the goal. To pass him, Ben-Hur had to cross the track, and good strategy required the movement to be in a forward direction, that is, on a like circle limited to the least possible increase. The thousands on the benches understood it all. They saw the signal given, the magnificent response, the four close outside Messala's outer wheel, Ben-Hur's inner wheel behind the other's car. All this they saw. Then they heard a crash, loud enough to send a thrill through the circus, and quicker than thought, out over the course, a spray of shining white and yellow flinders flew. Down on its right side toppled the bed of the Roman's chariot. There was a rebound as of the axle hitting the hard earth. Another and another. Then the car went to pieces, and Messala, entangled in the reins, pitched forward headlong. To increase the horror of the sight by making death certain, the Sidonian, who had the wall next behind, could not stop or turn out. Into the wreck full speed he drove, then over the Roman and into the latter's four, all mad with fear. Presently, out of the turmoil, the fighting of horses, the resound of blows, the murky cloud of dust and sand, he crawled in time to see the Corinthian and Byzantine go on down the course after Ben-Hur, who had not been an instant delayed. The people arose and leapt upon the benches and shouted and screamed. Those who looked that way caught glimpses of Messala, now under the trampling of the fours, now under the abandoned cars. He was still. They thought him dead, but far the greater number followed Ben-Hur in his career. They had not seen the cunning touch of the reins by which, turning a little to the left, he caught Messala's wheel with the iron-shod point of his axle and crushed it. But they had seen the transformation of the man, and themselves felt the heat and glow of his spirit, the heroic resolution, the maddening energy of action with which, by look, word, and gesture, he so suddenly inspired his Arabs. And such running! It was rather the long leaping of lions in harness, but for the lumbering chariot it seemed the four were flying. When the Byzantine and Corinthian were halfway down the course, Ben-Hur turned the first goal, and the race was won. The consul arose, the people shouted themselves hoarse, the editor came down from his seat and crowned the victors. The fortunate man among the boxers was the low-browed, yellow-haired Saxon, of such brutalized face as to attract a second look from Ben-Hur, who recognized a teacher with whom he himself had been a favorite at Rome. From him the young Jew looked up and beheld Simonides and his party on the balcony. They waved their hands to him. Esther kept her seat, but Iris arose and gave him a smile and a wave of her fan. favors not the less intoxicating to him, because we know, O reader, they would have fallen to Messala had he been the victor. The procession was then formed, and midst the shouting of the multitude, which had its will, passed out of the gate of triumph, and the day was over. Chapter 15 is called The Invitation of Iris. And then there's another chapter after that. I thought that was the end of the book, but I think we're going to have to finish it tomorrow because there's too much to finish it now, but not enough to... Yeah. All right, so we will finish book 5 tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed the race. It was quite a spectacle and ended pretty tragically. But it is what it is, as they say. And I don't know. It said that he was still. It didn't say that he died. The question that Kimmy asked was, did Masala die? We don't know. The story hasn't told us that yet. So, wow, what a race is what Granny Bear said. So that is the end of chapter, I think it... Yeah, the last chapter that I read. We do have 2 more chapters left in book 5, and we will read those tomorrow. I hope you're enjoying Ben-Hur, and good night. God bless you. We'll see